You know that feeling when you're scrolling through a mountain of TV specs and wonder if you're about to drop $1,000 on a screen that ends up looking like a fancy picture frame? I've been there, sitting on the couch, trying to picture an 85-inch panel in my living room and worrying whether it'll actually make my movie nights and gaming sessions feel any better. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. In this video I'm going to walk through the real-world experience of the Sony 85-inch X90L BRAVIA XR, talk about who truly benefits from a TV this size, and flag the hidden trade-offs before you decide to click Add to Cart. First off, let's talk about the physical presence. An 85-inch screen is not something you slip onto a standard stand and forget about. It practically demands a dedicated wall mount or a sturdy TV console that can handle the weight. If you have a living room that can comfortably accommodate a viewing distance of about 8 to 10 feet, the picture will feel immersive without you having to crane your neck. In a smaller space, the sheer size can become a headache. You'll end up with a wall that looks like a billboard and a viewing angle that forces you to sit at the edge of the room just to keep the image flat. So, if your floor plan is modest, this model is likely more drama than you need. Now, let's get into what the X90L actually does once it's up and running. Sony's cognitive processor XR is the brain behind the picture, and unlike a generic upscaler, it analyzes each frame in real time, balancing contrast, color, and motion to mimic what our eyes expect to see. In practice, that means a dark scene in a thriller will retain shadow detail without turning the whole frame into a gray mush, while bright highlights, think sunrise over a cityscape, pop without blowing out. I tested this with a mix of 4K streaming content on BRAVIA Core and a couple of PS5 demos, and the HDR performance felt genuinely richer than the average LED set you see in most living rooms. The full-array LED backlight is another piece of the puzzle. Sony spreads thousands of dimming zones across the panel, allowing it to boost peak brightness in bright spots while dimming the surrounding areas. The result is a more three-dimensional look that's especially noticeable in games that use ray-traced lighting. However, the X90L isn't a top-tier OLED. The black levels are still a step above the average LCD but not quite as deep as the premium Master Series. If you're hunting for absolute inky blacks for a dark home theater, you might feel a slight compromise here. Streaming is where the built-in Google TV platform shines. All the big apps, Netflix, Disney+, Amazon Prime, Hulu, sit in a single, scroll-free home screen, and voice search works through the remote or any paired Google Assistant device. The interface is clean enough that you won't spend more than a second finding what you want, and the recent BRAVIA Core integration streams 4K content at a higher bitrate than most services. So if you have a fast internet connection, you'll notice smoother gradients and less compression artifacts. The downside is the occasional app ghosting where a paused show takes a moment to resume, something I observed once with a live sports feed. It's not a deal breaker, but it's worth knowing that the system isn't completely immune to the quirks you see on any smart platform. Gaming is where this TV really tries to differentiate itself, and as a PlayStation 5 owner, I'm happy to report the dedicated game menu consolidates picture settings like variable refresh rate, auto low latency mode, and HDR tone mapping into one place. HDMI 2.1 ports deliver 4K at 120 Hz, so titles that support the higher frame rate, such as Demon's Souls and Ratchet & Clank, Rift Apart, look buttery smooth. The auto low latency mode automatically switches the TV to its lowest input lag mode the moment it detects a console signal, which means you don't have to dig through menus before a gaming session. In my testing, the input lag hovered around 13 milliseconds, comfortably within the range of competitive play. If you're a casual gamer, this might be overkill, but for anyone who wants the full PS5 experience, the hardware sync feels genuine. Let's talk about sound for a moment. Sony has kept the audio system fairly standard, a 2-channel speaker setup with Dolby Atmos support via a virtualization algorithm. In a large room, the built-in speakers are okay for dialogue and simple effects, but they won't replace a dedicated soundbar or surround system if you're after cinematic immersion. The TV does output a clean HDMI ARC signal, so pairing it with a decent soundbar is straightforward. Just remember that the TV's size doesn't magically boost its internal audio output. One practical consideration that often gets overlooked is power consumption. An 85-inch full-array panel draws a noticeable amount of electricity, especially when you crank up the brightness for HDR content. Sony lists an average of around 250 W in typical